Hey, boys, what's going on?
What's happening?
It must be Thursday.
It must be.
We are all together again.
And it must be 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Is it standard or daylight now? I always get confused after they change the clocks. Anyway, hello, everyone. My name is Steve Teresi. I'm the Director of Training and Technical Services here at JL Audio. I am at the mothership, as we call it, here in Miramar, Florida. And I have with me today Mr. Kevin Ferry, joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Excellent. And the man of the hour, the man, the myth, the legend, it's Mr. Rob Haynes from Southern California. Please say hello, Rob.
Ahoy, everyone.
Ahoy. This must be
go with the Marine thing, right?
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so some housekeeping things real quick. You guys are on Facebook watching us right now. There is no reason to click on anything else in the chat that says watch it now. You're watching it now. No need to click unless Kevin, Rob, or myself says, hey, here's a cool link for you to click. Nobody else, please. So that happens frequently, and we do our best to squash those ridiculous things the best we can. So continuing on with our Marine March, or what is it, Aquatic April? Is that where we're at now?
It rolled into it, yeah.
It did roll into it. Well, there's a lot to cover when it comes to marine stuff. So it does make sense that it extends into April, and the weather is starting to turn nice in most of the country. I know it's hot down here. I think it's getting better everywhere else. And if you're joining from most of the northern hemisphere area, it's starting to get really close to the marine season. So today's session, Rob is going to walk us through tuning a DSP or even a non-DSP amplifier on boats to try to get the best performance. And heavy focus, of course, on the DSP aspect of this, because that's where all the magic is happening right now, our MVi amplifiers and a number of other products out there to help you get the most when you're out on the water. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let Rob take over. So why don't you share your screen and take it away?
All right, sounds good. So pretty much like Steve said, the real focus on this agenda is going to be tuning a DSP-based marine system. Obviously, we're going to focus with our MVi line of amplifiers. But if you are using any other DSP-based product on your boat, these steps and these philosophies, for the most part, all should track. Obviously, with our tune software, we've implemented some nice, I guess you could say, I don't want to say steps, but we've implemented some nice tools that really make setting up and tuning with our MVi amplifiers a really efficient and easy process. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk a bit about the steps that you want to tackle while you're tuning a DSP-based system. And we are going to focus a bit on the differences between tuning a boat and tuning a car, because they really are two completely different monsters when it comes to what the end goal is going to be. We're going to talk about using zones and how to tune those properly, and also working with presets, which is a big feature for me on our MVi amplifiers, having the ability to literally toggle through up to 6 different audio systems on the boat just by pushing in a button and it quickly cycling through, which is something that's really cool. Now, what we're not going to do today is get deep into why we do things or super into actual tuning. We've covered that in a lot of our other sessions, and this is already a pretty deep session as it is when we start talking about mic placement in the different zones and tackling presets. So if some of the stuff we're discussing today may sound a little foreign to you, or maybe it's over your head, please, we've already got you covered. We've done plenty of trainings over the past couple of months. If you go to the JL Audio Facebook page and go under videos, or to our YouTube channel, you'll find our audio basics trainings. I think we even did an encore where we called it the fundamentals of audio. So those 3 sessions cover the basics of audio. Some of the terminologies we're going to discuss in this session, if you don't know what they mean, you can find them in those trainings. We also have trainings that cover our use of tune software. So what happens when you click this, how this is controlled. We're going to, our basic mobile tuning approach and our advanced tuning approach. Those will get a little more in-depth and show use of the equalizers and all pass filters and all of that stuff. So if you need more than what we're covering today, we got you covered. Check out those trainings on our Facebook page under videos. And you can also find them on the JL Audio YouTube page. And of course, any questions in the chat, Stephen and Kevin will do their best to answer them or send it to me. So With that said, let's talk a bit about what the basic tune's all about and why we want DSP on a boat in the first place. At the end of the day, even though we're going to call this the basic tune, this is going to sound substantially better than any non-DSP based system, because we're going to be able to take care of a lot of issues related to the frequency response. So what's playing out of the speakers in the environment, time related issues that could cause cancellations and maybe make subwoofers or specific speakers not sound as well in a specific listening location. All of this stuff we can correct with DSP. And even though we're calling this basic, it will sound night and day better. The other thing that's important with something like this basic tune is even on a complex marine system, this does make it a lot easier. And we'll talk about why. And you don't have to be perfect. And I think that's the big key with the basic tune. We're going to take care of a lot of nuances in the system that probably make it overly aggressive. And really, for me, the idea of a good sounding audio system, whether it's in the marine world or the mobile world or power sports, is that you have something that's tonally balanced. And that's really what tuning's all about, removing, for me, excess amounts of energy and having something that's a little more soothing, something not as fatiguing. And really, that's what the basic tune is all about. So when we do that with MVi, we're going to look at it as a different way than we do the car. For our car audio guys, we typically tune to a driver's seat, right? There's usually one person in the car we want to make it sound good for, and that's the driver. But marine's different. We're tuning for parties. We're tuning for large amounts of people. We also have different zones. It's not a single zone like a car or a power sports vehicle maybe. So when we talk about tuning with MVi, we're going to address the different zones. We're going to also address, do we optimize those zones or not? And what I mean by that is, are we going to make sure that entire zone sounds good for everybody? Or are we going to focus on a single person like the captain's chair up in the helm? Where do we want that best sound in the boat? Do we have large areas where other zones may interact with one another? We're going to have to think about that when we get into the tuning process. And of course, using our presets. We'll talk a bit about what are the differences between them. But for me, there's some good applicational uses for using presets with MVi that we'll get into. So not just having like dock party mode and full power mode, maybe killing tower speakers. We'll get into that. And there's a lot of cool uses. And we'll even talk about how to properly tune those presets when it comes to using your microphones and all of that. So now that we got that out of the way, let's kind of get into the tuning process when it comes working with MVi amplifiers. The first thing I'm going to say is please, please, please always use the setup tool found in Tune software. When you use the setup tool, it really streamlines the setup process. It labels all of your inputs. It labels your outputs. It creates all of your signal path routing, so you don't have to manually click on the input mixer and router panels. You don't have to worry about maybe you put your frequency, your signal path to the wrong EQ blocks. It creates safe starting points for your crossover filters. So in this case, we're probably in a marine application using marine coaxials and a subwoofer. So you already got your 80 hertz high pass and low pass filters set up. It gives you a foolproof, safe working system in the matter of 2 or 3 clicks. And I think our guys in tech support would agree. A lot of the tech support tickets that do come in for MVi or VXI related, help, a lot of it wouldn't even be a problem if the setup tool was used in the first place. So don't click cancel on it, please. Use the setup tool. Let it do that hard work for you. In a matter of clicks, you can be tuning your boat. The other nice thing on that setup tool panel when you first start your project in Tune software is this is also where we can input our distances for any signal delay. So depending where we're putting our microphone to tune in the boat, speakers are probably coming at us from different distances. So we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but pretty much from the microphone, you measure the distance to every speaker and input them into the setup tool. And you can do it a little bit later on as well on the Tune tab, but doing this will make sure all of the speakers arrive at your listening location at the same time. And we'll discuss the importance of that when we talk about the 3 pillars in just a bit. After we get the amplifier set up, the first thing we have to do is make sure we have our levels set properly. And this means our input sensitivity, and it's always a good idea to confirm your output strength of the amplifier within our Tune software as well. So in Tune software, first of all, on your source unit, you're going to play a 1 kilohertz sine wave. And I say to play 1K in this scenario because, again, we're probably using coaxial speakers. We're not going active. We don't have to worry about specific frequencies for tweeters, mid-range, mid-bass drivers like you may in the car world. So 1K, if you're using a coaxial, is always a good tone to use. Play it at 3/4 volume if you're using your subwoofer channels, 50, 60 hertz, somewhere around there. And 3/4 volume, very important. And this is what I love about MVi and the DSP on board. Mute the output of the amplifier. So click that little red dot you see under the arrow, and that mutes your output. So much easier than having to disconnect all your speakers from the amplifier to make sure we don't play a sine wave through them that could potentially damage them. So mute the amplifier. And then
that could be bad.
It could be bad. You don't want your speakers rocketing out of the boat before you even get to listen to them. So sine waves are not good for speakers, especially at high levels. So up in the top left corner on the setup tab, you're going to see a label that says inputs and a little icon that looks like a drawer. When you click that, it actually opens up a drawer. And this is where we're going to set the input sensitivity for each pair of inputs on our MVi amplifier. So with that 1K sine wave playing, those yellow dots you see right now, they're going to be some sort of color. They're going to be green, they're going to be yellow, or they're going to be red. And that's how strong the signal is coming into the amplifier. And what we want is the highest number in that drop down box you see right there. We want to choose the highest number that gives us solid yellow dots. So right now we have 7 and we're solid yellow. Go to 8. Is it still yellow, or is it going yellow red? If it's flickering yellow red, go back to the number that gives you solid yellow. If that's green, keep going up until you hit the highest number that is solid yellow. If you see red, that means we are overdriving the inputs of the amplifier. You're going to lower that until we're at that solid yellow. So solid yellow is king. So the highest number that gives you that. And remember, this is not a volume knob or a boost. Input sensitivity is really, it's the amplifier saying, how sensitive do I need to be with the signal coming in to hit my max output potential? So that's what we're doing. So if we have a strong signal coming in, the amp doesn't need to work as hard to put out its max potential. So we would want a lower number. If we don't have a strong signal, it's going to have to work harder, and that's why we use the larger numbers. So hopefully that all makes sense. But the beautiful thing with our program is a sine wave and solid yellow dots is king. And after that, you can either unmute the amplifier if your speakers are not plugged in, and just make sure your output is not clipping. Again, on the output side of things, when it's unmuted, you're going to have in those little dots in the bottom right corner next to each output channel, that's A, B, C, and so on. Those dots, again, will be red, yellow, or green. And we want to see all of those in the yellow in a perfect world. No red, because that means we're then clipping the outputs of the amplifier and could potentially damage speakers and have poor performance. And we definitely don't want that when we're trying to tune the boat or the audio system as well. So after we get our input sensitivity set up, it's time to start tuning. But before we start tuning, we have to kind of know what we're looking for. And I talked earlier where I said, my goal with system tuning is to remove any excess energy. I want something that's tonally balanced, something that's not going to be aggressive or fatiguing on the ears. And that means tuning to a specific curve, kind of like what I have on the screen here. And if you're not familiar with a target curve or what we're looking at here, I'll explain it to you real quick. On the bottom where you see frequency, left to right, that's the frequency response of the audio system. 20 hertz on the left, 20,000 hertz up on the right. So left is low frequency. You can see that little dash going up at 80 hertz. That's probably where we're going to have a crossover filter set for our speakers and our subwoofer. So everything to the left of that is the subwoofer, and everything all the way up is going to be our coaxial speakers. So on the vertical axis is amplitude. So how loud are those frequencies playing? And what we kind of want to see is a system where the bass is going to be about 15. I like 15 to 20 dB, but 15 or so dB higher than the mid-range signals, which is why you have that bump in the low frequency response. Our ears are weighted for it. Our ears want bass. If that was flat across the board, it would just be anemic. It would suck. It would be boring. So we want a bit of a boost. around 200 hertz or so. We want it to kind of smooth out or kind of dip down a bit. And again, we can get into all of these different curves and what's the right one, but at the end of the day, it really is up to you to figure out which one sounds best for your application. The top two for me in a marine application are probably what I would kind of lean towards, knowing we have a lot of high frequency and upper mid-range cancellation due to the environment, but choose the curve that works best for you. Now, what's important though is when you're getting these measurements, and this is going to be by placing a microphone in your listening location. There's all sorts of different software we talk about in those other trainings I mentioned earlier. You can use your computer. Some of the ones you'll see in a minute are just with my phone or my iPad using a microphone. But we're not going to have an acoustical measurement that's exactly perfect like these lines. If you made it completely perfect, I don't think you could. I challenge you to do that. You'll be there for days, and it probably won't sound as good either, because the more you try to fix stuff, as weird as it sounds, the worse it's going to be.
You're overcompensating. There's a lot of that stuff that doesn't really matter. There's especially at higher frequencies, a lot of the hash up there, especially on a marine application. Forget it.
Yeah.
Don't chase that. Chase the stuff in the mid-bass, mid-range area, and spend your time there, but not at the higher stuff. You can actually apply like banding or smoothing to make the response a little closer to a straight line. But Rob's point is absolutely true. Do not bother chasing some of the really crazy abnormalities, because you will go nuts. And the more you throw at it, the less likely it is it's going to sound any better. Appropriate amounts of equalization to compensate for the most dramatic issues is the best way to go.
Which is exactly why we say to go plus minus 5 dB from flat, as we see in this chart right here. So again, these are measurements I did with my phone with a cool tool called Audio Tools. And you'll notice that red line, that's the shape of the curve we want. But if you look at the scaling, if you can see the right side of those measurements, it goes 50 decibels, 60 decibels, 70 decibels, and in between will be your 5, so 55, 65. So that red line is flat at 60 decibels. That's how loud it is. So flat would be 60 dB in this case. So anything between 55 and 65 dB in this case, plus minus 5 from wherever my flat is acceptable. So if my measurement is anywhere in that thick orange curve that goes along with what our target should be, in this scenario for a basic tune, you're good. Don't try to overcorrect it. And as Steve said, especially when we get into the upper mid-range, high frequency side of things, in the marine environment, you're probably not going to hear a lot of that stuff anyways. So in a real measurement, it would look something like this. The red line is that curve we want to make our adjustments to. The blue is an actual measurement. That's playing pink noise from my source unit through a specific speaker or set of speakers, depending on what you're doing. And if you're not familiar with pink noise, it kind of sounds like static. It's just like a sound, and that's what we are going to do.
One more time. Can you do that again?
My mic's far away. I hope it picked it up, but a very, very good impression of it.
Oh, it didn't pick it up. Can you do it one more time?
One more time.
No. But if we look at this blue measurement here, you can see it follows the shape of the red line, and it never strays more than 5 decibels above or below it. So is it perfect to that curve? No, but it's going to be good enough. It's going to sound great, and it's going to sound nice because we removed a lot of excess issues, and we're going to show some other measurements in just a sec. So when we start making these adjustments, we always want to start with the furthest speaker from the microphone. And the reason I say that is, as we've talked about in some of our previous sessions, and Kevin covered it in our marine system design training last week, the further sound travels, we lose output, right? So we lose, per physics, 6 dB as the distance doubles. And of course, there's reflections and stuff that help, minimize some of that loss. But speakers closer to the microphone are going to be significantly louder than speakers further away. So we always want to start with the furthest speaker away so we can turn down the closer speaker to make sure they're at the same amplitude level. And that's one of the pillars we're going to discuss in a moment. Then we need to start looking at the individual zones. And we're not going to tune this boat as one giant system. We're going to break it down into zones. So you're going to do the bow speakers only. You're going to do the helm speakers only, the stern or aft section, maybe combine them into a single zone. Are there any other zones we need to work with? Swim deck, flybridge, tower speakers, any other speakers that are on this system, you're going to want to isolate and tune each one of those individually from one another. Then we add the subwoofer in. That always add the subwoofer last. We only want to tune each specific section. And usually for the subwoofer, it's just some level trim to bring it down to that 15 dB area we want increased from our coaxial speakers. So we're going to start talking about tuning the individual zones. We're going to use a towboat, ski boat here, but a lot of this will work with other vessels as well, especially when we talk about combining zones, like a large center console. The bow is far from the aft section speakers, but the way the boat's set up, the sound can still travel down the side. So, there's a lot of nuances that are still going to work, especially when we talk into the combination of zones here. But when we talk about tuning a zone, we have to take the analysis that I discussed. We have to visually see what we need to audibly correct. So what we're going to do is use some sort of software, whether it's a free program like REW or audio tools on an iPhone or iPad, whatever it may be. But we need to have a microphone in the boat so we can take measurements, playing that pink noise we discussed. So the question now becomes, where do you place the microphone? Again, in the car audio world, typically we place it at the driver's seat, right? Because that's probably where it needs to be optimized for. Maybe sometimes in the passenger seat or in between the seats if you want something that's catered to multiple people. So for me, when I look at the bow here, we're going to have multiple people sitting up front. There's people on each side. You might have someone dead center in the middle. So we want, and this is all about entertainment, right? Being on a boat, it's fun. It's having a party with your friends. So we want to make sure everyone gets that good listening experience. So that means we're going to place the microphone in this scenario dead center up in the bow. This way, being centered, it's optimized for everyone. If we put the microphone up front where that person sitting dead center is, it's not going to sound as good on the sides for the other two people as it is going to be there. So by kind of splitting the difference, if you will, and going dead center in the zone, it's going to make sure everybody, no matter where they're seated, is going to have a better overall listening experience. And to me, that's all about the fun, because it's taking away the fatigue, the over aggressiveness you may get from by sitting in a section that's not optimized or dialed in properly. So, bam. Next, let's talk about zone 2 here. Now, a lot of people would probably look at in a boat like this, the cabin or cockpit as one zone. I always like to look at this as 2 zones, because the person sitting in the chair there is probably the person that wrote the check. So it has to sound good. But again, the problem with that is if we put the microphone there, yeah, it sounds great when the captain's driving the boat and whatnot. But what happens when we have people sitting next to them up here? They're not in the sweet spot anymore. That's not optimized for them. So if we want something maybe a little more pleasing for everyone up in the helm, again, we move it to the center of that specific zone. Now everyone has that more pleasing overall sound, because it's catered to the
exception to that rule, though, Rob.
Yes.
The exception to that rule that you just stated, and I do like the idea of shifting the microphone position to a more centralized location. However, if those 2 other individuals have not contributed to the Beer and Barbecue Foundation, they're not getting that optimized sound. I'm shifting it right back over then.
Yeah.
It's always sometimes good to have that dialed in one position where the driver's seat is too, just for that initial demonstration to show them, hey, look what we did and look what we can do, and really show off what kind of skills and equipment. I mean, you've done a lot of work designing this system, installing it, dialing it all in and all of that. Take a second and show off exactly what you can do with that single point, and let that boat owner know, hey, look, this is it right here. This is the money seat, and it's going to sound great. He may not ever listen to it at that point again. He may have it, throughout the vessel, but having that initial, here's what we've done and gone through is always a great point too.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting on a boat we had done a couple of years ago in R&D. And this is before we had MVi. We had multiple tweaks on it. I remember Manville tuned it, and one of the presets was dialed into the captain's chair. I remember one of our guys spun around and said, "What did you do to the subwoofer?" It's like 6 dB hotter. I have never heard a subwoofer sound like that sitting in this chair before. And it was because everything was optimized to the chair. Delays, the EQ. Mainly it was delay. Just everything arriving at the same time made it sound like we boosted the subwoofer 6 decibels when it was just timing. So it's a lot of cool stuff. So moving a little further back, if we are looking at breaking these up into 2 different zones, again, same thing. We got multiple people sitting back here. Again, the sweet spot's going to be center, but not dead center in the cabin. We want to make sure we're dead center in this specific zone. So again, this is if we're going to look at these as 2 different zones. If we want to combine the helm and the aft section into one big zone, then again, center in the boat, but also shift that microphone forward into the center of the 2 combined zones at this. So in a tune like this, again, we're dead center. It's more pleasing for everyone. This is also really nice if you have those, some of the boats out there, the speakers, they're not, they don't match going down the side. Sometimes the placements are a little shifted due to how the hole's designed and whatnot. So especially in a situation like that where you don't have evenly placed speakers going down each side, something like this with delay and the levels really improves the listening experience. So it's not louder on one side. It's just a nice, pleasing overall experience. One thing we always preach, especially when we get into our marine system design, is multiple speakers everywhere, multiple subwoofers everywhere. That way you have a balanced, even listening experience no matter where you go. And tuning to the center like that makes sure no matter where you're seated, you're going to have that balanced listening experience. And again, we need to think outside of the boat as well. We have lots of boats with swim decks. And remember, these are water, marine speakers. They're weatherproof. They can be in the rain. They can get splashed on. So, put speakers on the back of the boat. I love that Geico commercial where they're sitting on the swim deck and you can see JL Audio speakers right behind them. I think that's just great advertising for us. Thanks, Geico. But if they had an MVi amplifier on it, hopefully they put a microphone wherever that group's going to be congregated again. And you kind of want to center the microphone where you're going to be hanging out to make sure we get those speakers tuned and dialed in. And it's not just about being, being on the swim deck or in the water, but also if you're partying at the dock or you're at a sandbar, again, wherever you want the sweet spot to be, place the mic there and make your adjustments. And then you can make a different preset and have a different audio system for dock mode or at the sandbar or something like that. But we also got to make sure we don't forget our surfers and wakeboarders as well that are being towed behind the vessel, and our skiers, of course. So again, however long your rope is, however far away they're going to be behind, again, that's where you're going to want to place a microphone and get that sweet spot dialed in and really make sure that even though they're being towed, they're going to have the wind in their face. They're still getting the best possible listening experience. And the one thing I like about having DSP for a zone like this is we can determine how loud it is. We can get, with level trim, gain up the outputs if needed. We can maybe remove specific frequencies to let the mid-range speakers breathe a little more and have a little more output. So a lot of cool things we can do with that. So don't just think about tuning inside the boat with your DSP. It's outside as well. It's the swim deck. It's the dock parties. It's the riders being towed or surfing right behind the boat. We want to make sure everyone gets that pleasing experience. And that's really the beautiful thing with DSP and taking measurements. We can see what needs to be corrected. And whether you're inside the boat, no matter where inside the boat, whether you're outside the boat, we can make sure that it's going to sound its best. So once we have our mic positions figured out, now we can start correcting the 3 pillars. And there's 3 things that are important to get us to great sound. And what we want is that curve we saw earlier. But as you'll see in a moment, it's probably going to look nothing like that. So we talk a lot in the car audio world. There's 3 pillars to what we call imaging, which means if you're sitting in your driver's seat, or home audio, right? You sit between 2 nice, expensive pair of speakers, dead center, and everything's where it's supposed to be. If the vocalist is dead center on the stage, they're dead center in front. If the guitarist is off to the right, you'll hear it off to the right. It's such an awesome experience And that's what we do a lot in the car. We do all sorts of stuff to make the voice sound like it's at the center of the dash and whatnot. It's a little different in the marine environment. What the end goal is being, we're not necessarily looking for a true stereo image because you're going to be all over, and there's a bunch of other factors, but the 3 pillars are still key to make sure we get the best overall sound performance. So we're going to use these 3 pillars in a bit of a different approach to make sure that we truly do optimize the system. And pillar 1 is frequency response. And frequency response is handled by 2 things. The first one's going to be high pass and low pass filters. Those filters determine what frequencies leave the amplifier to go to the speaker. So what's the speaker going to play? As we kind of talked about earlier, using our setup tool, the filters for 80 hertz for your low pass and high pass, that's part of pillar 1 the setup tool does for you. It says coaxials 80 hertz and up, that's what you're going to play. Subwoofers 80 hertz down, that's what you're going to play. So filters are one part, but it's also where our parametric EQ comes into play. Because with our measurements, we can see where what's coming from the speaker varies from the curve we want. And then with our EQ, make appropriate adjustments to bring it down to match the curve as closely as possible. And it kind of looks something like this. So these are 2 measurements right here, left and right side. I forget where we took these from. Doesn't really matter. But you can see we have the dashes at 80 hertz. So 80 hertz to the left is the subwoofer, 80 hertz to the right is going to be your coaxial speaker. And you can see our curve. That's what we want it to look like. But look at all of these big spikes of energy, especially around 500 to 800, 750 hertz. We're upwards of 12 dB away from that curve. That's way, more than twice as loud in those specific frequencies that we probably want to be. So when we look at these and then look at what we can do with a parametric EQ, you can see by making adjustments, and especially in that 500 to 800 hertz area, you can see by using the EQ to cut and bring those frequencies down, we're able to get a lot closer to that curve and take out all of that excess energy that can sound fatiguing, be overly aggressive, and just give us a more balanced, even response. And yeah, this is not perfect. There's some areas you could probably spend a little bit more time working on, maybe around 1500 hertz. But for the most part, this is going to sound great and sound a heck of a lot better than if we didn't make those adjustments. And what we're looking at right here, this would be a response that you would have no matter what if you did not have DSP in your boat. So we already know we've all done great sounding systems without DSP. They sound great, but we can make them sound better with DSP. And that's the beautiful thing about using a product like MVi, is we can take those high level systems to the next level just by removing excess energy that the speakers are playing or the cabin may be causing, reflections, all types of stuff like that. So that's pillar 1.
Rob,
filters and EQ. Yes.
Before you move on, keep that. Nope, go back. See. So on that image there, actually, if you go back one more when you show the big peaks. There you go. Perfect. So earlier when you were chatting a while ago, Mike, is it Cantley? He was saying, he said something like, wait. You want to turn a speaker down on a boat? And when I saw this image, I thought of his comment because I told him it's rare. But in this case, with all that extra energy, if you tried to get it balanced without an EQ, you might wind up cutting the level on the main speakers. And as you pointed out, that your high pass filter is going to be around 80 hertz, which basically means all of that energy above 80 hertz would be reduced with a level adjustment. Having a parametric EQ to make the changes, go to the next slide, to make the changes that make it look like this, means you're not turning the whole speaker down. You're just getting rid of the energy from the area that it's too much. And at that point, you might be able to bring the levels back up and make it even louder. So that's the benefit of tuning a boat in this case. And when we don't have the component speakers that we may have in a car, you don't wind up turning down the energy that you want to keep just to get rid of the energy that you don't want. So I thought it was a good opportunity to address Mike's comment now, and we'll talk more with him later, I'm sure. So sorry to interrupt you, Rob, but I just saw
no, that was a great question, Mike.
And that's a lot of energy that, to me, it pops out as reflective energy from fiberglass or something like that. But energy that I also look at and say, man, after somebody listens to this for a while, they're going to be a bit fatigued.
Now, the truth is that maybe that energy is really good when you're under speed. Like if you got the throttle all the way down, maybe you need that extra energy. But that's when the modification of the target curve that Rob mentioned earlier, find what works for you. Find a curve that makes sense for the listening environment that makes you and your customer happy. So maybe that extra energy is something you want, which is great when you have a preset. You switch it to that preset when you're under speed and off you go. That's one of the big benefits of the DSP, I think.
Yep, and we'll get into that. All right, so pillar 2 is level. And this does get a bit interesting because you actually may need to turn down the entire speaker depending where your microphone is. Again, the whole idea, the important thing with level is that we have balance. Depending where you want your sweet spot to be, some speakers may be louder than others. So it is important that we have that balance between them. And as Steve mentioned, if we have the room later on, once everything's dialed in, we can link all outputs and gain up the entire system to get some more output without reducing balance. So again, it really depends on what your end goals are. I know it sounds crazy to say turn down speakers, especially when you're in a loud marine environment. But if you want a pleasing experience for everybody, you may need to do that. And level is an important pillar to make sure we have that equal balance. So the other nice thing about having that is also no matter where you go, as we discussed, you want that balance. So, you know, if the bow measures 79.1 decibels, we want the helm to measure 79.1. We want the aft section to measure 79.1. And again, if we have more speakers in the rear of the boat, you may want to turn them down so they're not louder than the fewer speakers up in the front. So again, it really depends on what your goals are. But if you want a balanced kind of pleasing everyone type system, these are the right steps to do it. And, you know, by all means, this is not the end all be all, but this is a good way to get into that. For me, you know, it's about great sound. It's about balance, but it's also about reliability. And let's make sure we get into that as well. So,
Rob,
but, you know,
slide up for a second.
Yeah.
So this is a bit different than the slide you showed earlier where we had the bullseye pointing out where to put the microphone. And I was looking forward to showing this slide to everyone because there is a slight difference on when tuning if you want that experience of keeping the same level as you move through the boat. So earlier you showed the bullseye where the blue microphone is and the bullseye where the green one is, and then you had it move to the middle area of both of those. And that's when the time delay and things like that really kick in. If you're trying to optimize it for that one location, I would contend that this may be a better approach when you had that ability. And again, not to harp on it too much, but that's where presets really come in handy. If you have the party going on where people will be moving from one zone to the next, do what Rob's saying right here. Make that level consistent as you go from the front to the middle to the back of the boat. No matter what size boat it is, sometimes you have things that are midship and things like that going on where you can walk around. And this is one of the things that we do. That app that he's showing you there on your phone, you walk around and you look at the average level as you're listening to a really dynamic track, something that's fun, and you want to make sure that it always sounds really good at the same level as you walk through the boat. That's magical. When your customer doesn't even realize that the music is coming from different speakers as they go from the front to the back, that's when you've nailed it. That's when you've nailed it. So yes, our blood comes from a lot of the car audio background where we try to optimize and get the tonal, you know, the imaging and the balance like that always as perfect as possible. But that's not what boating's all about. Yes, we have the ability to do that, as Rob said. But this is the experiential thing that I think makes boating so much more fun. You can actually have a whole bunch of people all partaking in the experience at any point on the boat and get a great experience. I love it. Sorry, soapbox stepping down.
Perfect. Oh, it would help if I went back in my presentation. There we go. All right. So the final pillar we need to discuss is phase or timing. And this is where those distance measurements we talked about earlier come into play. So wherever you put your microphone, we need to measure the distance. And really the main reason for the delay, it's not necessarily to, you know, for imaging or to make it sound like it's coming. It really is a key aspect of frequency response. If we have speakers playing the same content arriving at different points in time, you're going to probably end up with cancellations in your frequency response. So this whole delay aspect is to make sure we don't have it's not mess up the frequency response at the end of the day. And that story I was telling you about the boat where that was optimized to the captain's chair, that subwoofer sounding the way it did was because there was no phase related issues that the non-DSP system had. And it's not that there was anything wrong with how the system was designed. It's acoustics, it's physics, right? But we can manipulate that stuff with DSP. And that's really where the delay aspect is key. So wherever your measurement's going to be, make sure everything arrives there at the same time. And it's all distance. Measure the distance. Tune does all of the hard work for you to figure out what delays need to be applied. So everything arrives at that same time. Not necessarily part of this system, but if you really want to get deep into the world of phase, you can always look at all pass filters as well. And you can learn more about those in our advanced tuning sessions we've done. So now that we've kind of covered the process and where we want to tune and what we want our results to look like, how do we maximize that with presets with MVi amplifiers? So in Tune software, you can create up to 10 presets and store 6 of them on your MVi amplifiers. I love the presets. For me in my car, with VXI, I have different audio systems, different inputs I use. But in the marine world, especially when we talk about these complex, advanced marine systems we've been discussing throughout our, Marine March, Aquatic April sessions, this is really where the presets of MVi really allows you to maximize your investment and get even more from your system, because we can use them for different activities. We've talked about having a driver or captain focused tune, a tune for the sandbar or people being towed or surfing behind the boat. We've got the dock party mode. We've got cruising mode. We've got tower speakers, a preset where tower speakers turn on and off so they're not on when there's not someone behind the boat. Maybe we have a preset that kills the bow speaker so you have a quiet talking area without killing the party in the back. So these are the benefits of having presets. So, a couple good examples. Preset 1 here, we have a dock party mode. Again, we place the microphone behind the boat, and there we're going to tune just the speakers that may influence that entire area. So definitely the speakers outside of the boat, but maybe we have tower speakers also we want to be part of that. Or maybe just the aft section speakers in the boat and nothing up in the bow. Another thing we can look at is the driver optimize. Again, everything's kind of configured to the captain's chair, right? So we've got our microphone there. We delay the speaker so everything hits the driver at the same time. And then we can then make our EQ and level adjustments as needed. And again, this is where level would be important. We're not dead center in the boat. So all of the right speakers are going to be really loud compared to the left speakers because they're not traveling as far. Again, this is where turning down those right speakers would be key to make sure we have that proper balanced sound for that specific location. If we're centered, you may not need to do that unless we're talking about, front to back. So preset 3, the cruising preset. This is what Steve was talking about earlier. Maybe this is one where we kind of ramp everything up a bit. Maybe we are not as aggressive on the EQ corrections, and we make sure all of our output levels are all the way up until, well, as far as you can go without clipping. We don't want to go all the way up, but we want to hit our max non-clipped output to make sure we can overcome all of the wind, water, and engine noise. And yeah, that may mean not being as aggressive on your EQ correction in some of those areas. The nice thing about the presets is that may be really aggressive when you're off power. So being able to toggle between how you're using the boat and how the audio system is going to react, for me, is a big benefit with these presets. And again, the sandbar and rider, again, you would probably want to be a little more aggressive on these. We're talking being outside of the boat. We're talking about distances now, anywhere from a couple feet to 10, 12, 15 feet. So we may, again, want to be a little more aggressive on or less aggressive on the EQ correction and be a little more aggressive on our levels to make sure not only that we can get out that far, but also that we can kind of try to keep balance with the subwoofers inside the boat and what they're going to be hearing outside.
Another nice thing about the preset thing, Rob, and you've been touching on it with the EQ changes. Whenever you get into a situation where you're going to try to goose and get a little bit more output for those, further away from the vessel listening environments, you can also change the high and low pass filters. So you can take a little extra mid bass away from the main speakers, which is going to be hard to really project behind the boat anyway. So why ask the speaker to work that hard? You can just raise it a little bit instead of, just for argument's sake, instead of 80 hertz, maybe goose it to 90 or 95 hertz. And that little change there can give you a little bit more output in the frequencies that are really going to matter. Same thing with the sub, but you can change that and maybe even let some more energy go through the sub at the top end to try to compensate for it. All of that is totally up to you when you're tuning the system to give you the performance that you're looking for. And Rob touched on it a few times. Reliability is key in all of this. You're out there, you're railing on it a little bit, especially when you're not actually in the boat. It's real easy to get really aggressive with the volume. Make some subtle changes, and each preset can have totally different things. You can even mute certain sections. If you're behind the boat and no one's going to be in front of it, turn the bow off. Why bother with it? Why waste that energy? It's not really going to contribute to anything. So you can actually turn that off by changing the preset too.
This is a good point to mention. If you're doing these tunings off the back of the boat there, Josh's comment here made me think of it.
Waterproof mics.
We'll bring it up here and show it there.
It might be a little hard to tune in the water, so usually figure out the distance you're normally going to be, because also the mic's going to be moving and you're really not going to probably get a good measurement.
No, it's a spatial averaging, Rob. Come on.
There we go.
So obviously it is a little tricky to do the measurements outside of the boat, especially when you're trying to get back like at the end of a tow rope. One way that I found to be pretty effective is to dock the boat at the end of the dock back in and then walk down the dock with the microphone as far down as your cabling will allow. That way you get the distance. Now, granted, there's a slight difference in terms of the surface of the dock versus the water and all that other stuff. But with your knowledge of the environment you're tuning it in, at least you're getting the distance approximately right. And that's a big benefit for all the reasons that Rob's already shared. So, yes, it can be done without needing a buoy.
Dry dock, wherever you're at that point in time, you can make it work. But backing the boat up to the dock is a great way to do it, and that way you have the ability to not get wet and make your adjustments in a safer environment. Not completely safe, because you can still drop the mic off the side of the dock or something, but you're safer.
So another cool preset option really is to mimic what a non-DSP system would be. So set your crossover points, obviously, those 80 hertz, low pass, high pass filters, but no level trim adjustments, no EQ, no signal delay, and compare it, and I think this is where, for a retailer, this is where you could really show a customer the benefits and how much DSP will improve that system. Again, that boat I told you about, going from what it used to sound like to, whoa, I have never heard it like this before. Just by changing the preset, that's where this non-DSP use really comes into play. And even if you want to show off to your friends, this is what it used to sound like, and this is what it sounds like now. It's really cool to be able to compare, what essentially an analog system compared to a digitally optimized system with an MVi amplifier. So just some cool preset options that you have there. But I know we covered a lot.
That last one, Rob. Sorry. Not to belabor the point, too much, but that last one, that preset 5 they had there, the no DSP setting, I would contend that of all of the presets that you've outlined for us as examples, this one could be the hardest one to get right. Because when you're going through the tuning process of getting rid of the excess energy that may be present on the boat, either from the speaker's performance or the loading situation or the reflective surfaces, when you dial all that in, you are pulling energy away from the system. And when you go to do the non-DSP one and you aren't pulling away specific areas of energy, that excess energy will hit someone's ear and it sounds louder. In many ways, it is louder, but it's not louder and better. It's just louder. So to do the non-DSP setting correctly, you would have to focus in on the average energy broadband and try to bring that to match the average energy broadband of the properly tuned system. And that can be a little bit tricky. So I would encourage all of our retailers to spend some time learning how to find the average energy broadband and bring those levels down. So when you do the demonstration for your customer, it's a fair assessment. most customers, all of us, everyone watching right now, all of us will gravitate towards something that sounds louder until we listen to it for a little bit longer. And we may realize, as Kevin mentioned earlier, yeah, it's louder, but it just doesn't sound quite right. And that's where the DSP benefit really comes in. By tuning out the things that are not quite right, you can get a truly great sounding system that can also play very loud. It just doesn't jump out at you as loud. So I think that's the hardest preset. But if you get it right, it's worth every minute you spend on it, without a doubt.
All right. Well, we did cover a lot. Again, there's a lot of there's so many things we can do with DSP. In these larger systems, especially if we're dealing with MVI, just make sure we look at it at a zone by zone basis. Just like we've preached when it comes to designing and building a system, we want to tune it by zone as well. Find a curve that works best for you. And this is going to require some practice. And that means just doing it over and over again. You know, try the different curves, listen to the system with music, and determine which target curve is going to work best for you. Again, I typically find in the marine environment, something with a little more of a increase in the curve in the upper mid-range high frequency is ideal due to the environment and the cancellation, compared to the car where I kind of like my curve to tail off to mitigate the reflections in the vehicle I don't want, since we're in a more controlled cabin. But figure out what curve works best to you. You know, make the adjustments to those 3 pillars we discussed, get the distance dialed into the listening location, make sure your amplitudes are even and your frequency response. Try to make left and right match to the best of your ability, and make sure you don't have any weird issues when you combine them. And just take advantage of those presets. You know, those presets are key. You know, we've talked a lot about them, but I mean, they literally can be 6 completely different systems. You can have completely different inputs. You can have different EQs. You can have different signal delays, different levels. They are all 100% completely customizable from one another. So I saw there was a question in the chat earlier about, you know, presets and the delay. You can have completely different delays on the different presets. You can have the different levels. They are up to you what you want to do with them, and completely separate from one another. Yeah, you can duplicate them so you have most of the work done and make minor changes here and there, or you can completely start from scratch and do something completely different with them. So they're really cool, and really make sure that if you have a boat with an MVI system on it, you are literally getting everything out of your system if you do the presets the right way.
Yep. I think one of the ones. Sorry, Kevin, let me just finish this real quick. One of my favorite parts of tuning for marine audio applications is kind of what Rob was talking about, the different target curves and what you find best for you. What I think is great about that is sometimes what's happening at the dock is not what's happening when you're out there. So that means you have to go out there. And you have to make some mental notes of, wow, you know, the high frequency doesn't sound right when we're under speed. So maybe we need to go back and retune this. Or maybe the mid-range gets drowned out by the sound of the motors or whatever. And when you're out there in the experience, again, out on the open water, doing boating-like things, and you're listening to the audio system, that's when you'll alter your tuning curve, your target curve based on those different environments. And that's very different than a car. Even in a car, if you're on highway speed versus parked, it's going to sound different. Make a note of what those differences are and make a preset that accounts for that. That's huge. That's huge. And of course, when you're out on the water, oh no, we got to go back out there. I'm not sure if I got this right. We got to go back out next weekend too. So that's fun. So go ahead, Kevin. Sorry I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that was actually one of the questions. I've got a list here to go through because we had some pretty good questions going through. And that was actually one I was going to touch on. So I will cross that one off.
Done. Hey, Rob, you did say it. We covered a lot, and there is a lot to cover. And we could go even deeper into some of the tuning process, but I think you did a really great job of giving an idea of what it's like to tune on a boat. Especially using a quality DSP like we have in our MVi amplifiers. I was going to run over and grab the DRC50, but I think they can watch the video when we talked about that and how you can change presets. It's nice and easy. So thank you, Rob, for covering all that. I know Kevin mentioned he's got a huge list of questions, and I have a feeling I know which ones he's going to call up. So, Kevin, why don't you start rattling off some of the ones that are on your list?
All right, let's start here. He's been torn for a while whether he should sell his MHD and go MVI. Sound quality is still very important to him. And the stackability of the MHD amps is a plus. I'm hoping the MVI sound quality isn't any worse, or is it better? Is his question on there. And he has a mid-sized pontoon boat he mentioned in another thing.
24-footer, I think.
Paying attention. Yeah, I thought it was mid-20s, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's 25 feet bigger than my boat. So
it's literally about the same size as my dad's pontoon. Actually, I think his is right around that same area too.
So here's my take on this. The MHD, in terms of ultimate sound quality, probably has a minor edge if you take all other bits out of the equation. However, with the flexibility of the DSP and some of the things that we've built into MVI, you could do more with MVI to get it to sound better than you can with just an MHD. There's also a concern that I always like to share, whether my company wants me to or not, I don't know. But MHD puts more of a demand on the electrical system of any application, car or boat. So if you're able to feed that beast, it does some wonderful things for you. If you're not able to, then MVI again gets the nod on that because it's a non-regulated power supply. I struggle with answering your question, though, because you probably have a really good system. And it's one of those things, if it's not broken, what are you fixing? And that may play into another question from your list, Kevin, but someone asked if we make the tweak for marine applications.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did a number of years ago, 6 or so years ago, when we were developing, we did put it in the salt fog chamber to try to beat it up to see what would happen if it was put into a high moisture environment.
While playing.
While playing, of course, yeah. With the DRC connected to it the whole nine, full on tweak 88 in the chamber, water spraying on it. It lasted for a period of time, not to be disclosed, but it did last for a period of time. And then we did start having some failure modes related to the moisture. Bear in mind, this product is not IP rated at all. It's not intended for this application. So with that said, I'll share with you. Yes, you could put it on a boat, but keep it as dry as you possibly can because the moisture, it won't do well. But in terms of vibrational issues, no problem. Just be careful with it. It's not intended for the application. So here's what I would do. I'm not sure. Is he a retailer? I don't know the name.
I'm not sure. I think he was end user.
So it's tricky. If you were a retailer, what I would do is I'd say try it. Try it at the dock where it's not going to get wet. See if you can tune the system with a Tweak 88 and the MHD amplifiers to see if it's going to be worth it to try to switch it out. I will tell you this, that the MVI product does have some flexibility that the Tweak may not offer for you. So if the Tweak works, the MVI will absolutely work for you. So hopefully that helps. And I know it's not a great answer, but there are too many variables to give you a solid answer without knowing the rest of the story.
And I have my personal opinion. I guess we all kind of have our own personal opinion on this one.
You know what they say about opinions,
right?
The PG audience, come on.
To me, it would be a hands down MVI for me personally. If I was designing a system for my own personal pontoon boat, it would be an MVI amplifier. Pretty easily decision made by myself there.
Normally I'd be right with you, Kevin, but it sounds like he already has the MHD.
Right, he does. And the MHDs are great amplifiers, and they do sound really good. But when you're out there cruising around with a lot of noises and stuff like that, you're going to be able to manipulate the audio much more easier with the MVI, like Steve said, and be able to have it probably end resulting sounding in a better manner too. And to me, the preset aspect, you can't. Yeah. There's nothing that you can do to get that benefit out of an MHD.
So in the comments, Gerard just said he was looking to expand the system. Now you want MVI, because MVI, you have multiple pairs of pre-outs with DSP processing. So you can now add an MVI amplifier and further enhance your MHD amplifiers by tuning the signal that's coming in, thus blessing them with the intelligence of DSP. So if you add an MVI, everything's going to sound a lot better.
Right. Get the 606. It's got a ton of preamp outputs, and now your MHD has a DSP.
Right.
So there you go. Yeah, it's all perfect. Best of both worlds.
Right. All right, we got another one. I might have missed this, but are presets the only way to control zone levels on the fly? For example, towers versus interior versus sub. And this is there's a couple ways you could answer this. Yes, that is the easiest way to control all of that. However, if your receiver has multiple ways to multiple zones already on it, also you could, if you can get away with it, a DRC with the or a DRC 205 with the DRC adapt, make sure that it is in a very non-environmental zone because it's not made to be used in that environment. But you could set up the DRC 205 to be able to do that. And if you are using a single amplifier, make sure that you are using the DRC adapter to go along with that too.
And my summary on Kevin's answer there was, in terms of elegant ways and simplistic ways, the DRC 50 is the easiest way to change the sound system on a vessel with zone changes and many other changes. It's literally a push of a button. Second to that would be level adjustments from a control unit like the MM100, the Media Master 100. You have separate level controls for those different zones. If you wanted to either greatly attenuate or mute a zone, you could go in and control each one of those zones independently. A brute force method would be have dedicated amplifiers with a toggle switch that turns them on and off. You may have turn on and turn off noises associated with that, but again, it's a brute force. High degree of elegance, DRC 50, and then from there you go on down the list. So, what else we got?
Mike says after you've tuned, you should probably have a few drinks and then retune. I think that is
the 3 dB
per beer rule. Yeah. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. Boating while drunk is not a good idea. So make sure you have a designated navigator there that can manage that boat. But you are right. As you rail on the system a little bit and you start putting back a few, it does change the way you perceive that sound. And again, that's where the mental note comes in. That if you can remember after the day of drinking, if you can remember what the sound changes were like, then you could go back and retune the system accordingly. So, but who asked that question, by the way?
Oh, that was
Mike again.
Mike.
Yeah, it was Mike again. And he said he was just kidding about his previous comment. So I wanted to clear his name there. I said it was a good comment to make because it was a good discussion to have. Not everybody may have that same mentality as you're going through there. So it was a very good comment to bring up, but just wanted to make sure he knew we knew he was just joking with that.
Judging from the comments, I think Mike, Glenn, and I need to go tune some boats. That's what I'm thinking.
Right. Man, I hate when this thing jumps on me here.
A lot of comments coming in.
Here's a very good one here from John. Can different presets use different inputs? Example, can you use preset 1 for an analog input and then preset 2 for a digital input? Well,
normally, yes.
On VXI, yes.
On the VXI you can, but the MVi does not have the optical input. But yes, you can change what source is what input is being used as you change through presets. So with the VXI, not to make it a car audio thing for a minute, but for the VXI, you would be able to switch between an analog and a digital input by changing your preset. But on an MVi, you could change input 1 and 2, input 3 and 4, input 1 and 6, whatever. You could actually do whatever you'd like. It's almost too flexible in that regard. But yes, everything can change on preset. The only thing that can't is bridging channels. Bridging channels, that's similar to wiring the amplifier a different way, and we can't magically change that wiring by changing the preset. But anything up until the speaker outputs, yes, it can change with a preset change.
I know I have a buddy who has he has a smaller setup. He has a 5-channel MVi with a older source unit, doesn't have Bluetooth on it. So he has that plugged into inputs 1 and 2, and then he's got a preset where he has an MBT RX plugged into 3 and 4 for any Bluetooth streaming on the boat. So, just by using those 2 different presets, he has 2 completely different source units. Everything else is the same, but he can change, essentially add Bluetooth by, using a streaming device into a different pair of inputs with a new preset.
It's a good solution there, for sure. Good.
Alrighty, I think we covered most of the
Here's a good one that just came up. Mike asking, do the MVi amplifiers need a hub?
Maybe.
That depends on your installation.
Definite maybe.
There is a hub available. If you do need one, there is one that you can connect them up to. It all depends on the presets, the way things are laid out in the vessel, what amplifiers that you are using. If you're using more than two, we'll say, multi-channel full-range amplifiers, and you're using multiple presets, then you'll probably want to use a hub. The hub also kind of simplifies when you're going through and tuning the amplifiers too, a little bit more even so than the VXI amplifier does. So it's a nice piece. It works out very, very well. Also, you kind of lose some of the adapter needs if you're using like a BTC to do tuning. You don't need the DRC adapt to do to plug the BTC into the hub itself, and things like that too. So it depends on your application and what you're doing. But we have one available if you need it.
If you need it, yep. If you need it. Cool. Good questions. Lots of good enthusiasm for the marine stuff. I like it a lot. A whole lot. So, Rob, thank you again for an amazing job going through that. Kevin, thanks for managing as much as you did with the chat, because I was busy doing some things here. So wanted to thank everybody for watching and interacting with us. It means a lot when we get your feedback. And on that note, I'd like to ask for your feedback. If there's a certain topic you want us to cover, let us know at training@jlaudio.com. We want to hear from you about what you might want Kevin, Rob, and I to cover in the future. We seem to like doing Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock Miami time. It seems to work well. We get a nice size audience and a lot of interaction, and we've been pretty consistent on that. However, if there's a day or time that may work out better, please let us know. We will take it under advisement and see if we can address some of those requests. So if there's nothing else for today, I'm going to say thank you once again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.